Let's move on to the Big 12 championship game. It's a rematch of that great game we saw a couple of weeks ago. Baylor blowing that huge lead at home to Oklahoma. Second time around, the Sooners are 2-score favorites in this one, Chip.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley's been so good in November in these conference championship spots. And I do think that Oklahoma is going to figure out a way to win this. But I can't help but look at Baylor's blowout win against Kansas in the regular season finale and wonder if there was something for Matt Rule and that coaching staff to sort of get them in the rhythm. You know, we are going to get out and we are going to be scoring because we believe that we probably need to score 40 in order to beat Oklahoma. And when it comes down to it, the Lincoln Riley-led Oklahoma program in these Big 12 championship games, in these late season games, they have found ways to win, you know, whether it's 55-48 or whether it ends up being something that's maybe a little bit lower scoring than that. Now, I just love that winning culture, that winning mentality, the confidence that everyone on that roster has, that no matter what the score is, you know, as long as we get the ball back to Jalen Hurts, as long as we get the ball back to our offense, we're going to find ways to score. And I think that kind of mentality is something that is really, really effective. I think it permeates throughout the entire program. And I think that as much as I want to take Baylor to be able to get some vengeance here, to be able to go to the committee and say, hey, we beat everyone on our schedule, I still think the Sooners are just a little bit too good in this spot.
I'm with you, Chip, and I think they're improved too. Again, something I noted on earlier. This is the #1 total defense in the Big 12. #1 scoring defense title, that belongs to Baylor. However, this Oklahoma defense has mightily improved. You look over the past couple weeks, talked about that matchup versus Oklahoma State, but even versus TCU, held them to just shy over 200 total yards in that matchup. And we know how good their offense is. We know how good Jalen Hurts is, you know, both running the football and through the air. Although the past couple weeks hasn't necessarily been that as prolific of a passing game as we're accustomed to seeing from Jalen Hurts. Curious to see whether or not that carries over for a rematch with Matt Rule and that defense for Baylor. Now, that is tough to go up against, but this is going to come down to whether or not Oklahoma can make some of the adjustments that plagued them previously, and if that defense can get and generate more turnovers. The last 2.5 games, that includes that second half versus Baylor, 5 turnovers generated. That was an area where the Oklahoma defense really struggled. When you have a prolific offense, it's not always about, you know, being able to stop opponents. It's about being able to slow them down and getting your team additional possessions so they can put up more points. I think if Oklahoma can do that, and they will do that in this matchup, I think they'll come away with the win. That 8.5, though, it's a big number. However, in this case, I think Oklahoma knows they're going to have to impress because, you know, Utah maybe winning a close one versus Oregon. I think they actually end up going over in this one.
All right, so that's a rematch of a great regular season game. Into the Big 12 championship game at Jerry World. Oklahoma, a 7.5-point favorite against the Baylor Bears in a rematch of a game that Baylor flat out blew a few weeks ago.
So this number, I liked it when it was up at 9. Now it's come down to 7.5. I love it here for Oklahoma. Lay the 7.5 points here. Remember what happened in the second half. I know people are going to go back and look, well, Baylor had them up 28-3, and they did blow it, as you referenced, Chris. But remember what happened in the second half. You saw the defense come alive for Oklahoma, which is still an underrated unit, I think, nationally. People aren't giving attention enough to what Oklahoma is doing defensively. And I think Jalen Hurts and company will go back to what they do best. That's establish the line of scrimmage. I don't think Jalen Hurts will turn the ball over in this game. I think Oklahoma wins impressively here by at least a touchdown and probably more along the lines of 2 touchdowns.
We got a rematch of the Big 12 title game in mid-November. Baylor had a 28-3 lead against Oklahoma, blew it. It's the Bears' only loss of the season, and it's a heck of a turnaround by Matt Rule, who went 1-11 in his first season at Baylor 2 years ago. Oklahoma trying to get back into the playoff just like last year. Jalen Hurts and the Sooners, 9-point favorites in this one. Barton, what do you expect to happen in the Big 12 championship?
You know, this is probably the most interesting game to me on the docket, and probably the least confident in terms of my play here. But I'm going to play Oklahoma for the same reason I laid the points against Oklahoma State a week ago. Just look at why Oklahoma has been playing teams close. It's not because they're not playing good defense. They are playing pretty good defense. It's not because they're not moving the ball on offense. They're moving the ball as effectively as they ever have. It's just that they've been turning the football over. And Jalen Hurts in particular has been turning the football over. He's thrown a couple interceptions, pick 6 against Baylor, and he's fumbled the football. And those fumbles and those interceptions are what has limited and slowed this Oklahoma team down. So certainly if those turnovers pop up again, then Baylor is going to be in great position to cover and maybe win this football game. But if Oklahoma takes care of the football, and we found turnovers to be fairly cyclical, especially when you look at the way Jalen Hurts has turned a few of these over in terms of the fumbles and some where he's shown really good ball security. He's just had bad luck. I think that this evens out. I think that Oklahoma makes a strong statement and makes it difficult on the committee to make a decision here. And I think Oklahoma goes ahead and makes that statement it's been wanting to make against Baylor.
It's too many points. It's way too many points for a game that I think is going to be potentially even decided by less than 7 points. It's going to have a back and forth feel. I believe that Baylor's going to be able to get out and run. And I know it was Kansas, but I look at Baylor putting up 60 plus on the Jayhawks in the regular season finale. And I think that was Matt Rule and the offensive coaching staff sort of getting that offense in the rhythm of getting you the feeling of scoring those touchdowns, knowing that you're going to have to score a whole bunch to be able to beat the Sooners. I think Baylor's going to make this an incredibly competitive game. I'm picking Oklahoma to win, but at 9 points, I mean, I really am seeing a 48-45, 48-43. If you want to take the over, buckle up and jump on that. But Baylor unders have been a little bit too profitable for me to follow you. But when you've got this many points in a game that I do expect to be competitive, I will absolutely take the underdog.